plus the injury is obvious. A mental health injury, sometimes it's not so obvious to the person that he or she needs help, and then, as I said, sometimes there's a stigma and they don't want to seek that kind of help. But as Leah said earlier, one of the earlier callers from Texas, there are resources out there, and suggest that upon family and friends of those who come back who are having trouble to help guide that person into counseling. And Boaz, I just want to expand that just a little by suggesting as well that it's not just necessarily the combat vet who may need counseling. It may be his spouse. It may be his children who don't even know who Dad is when he comes back, because Dad's been gone for 2 years, and I don't know, maybe the child was 2 years old or a year old when Dad left, and he's just a memory and a faded memory to that child. So it's not such an easy thing to transcend back into society, and we ought to recognize that and be helpful and embracing as we can.
Unfortunately, Gary, and I'm going to add a little more to this from my experiences back in the Middle East. That what happens is the military apparatus that treats veterans do it in a triage sort of way. They take as a first that is soldiers that come back that are physically hurt get the best care and the most care, and unfortunately those that are mentally affected by the war come second, and that's very unfortunate that it is that way, but that's the way it's been in most militaries around the world, not just in the United States but in other countries too. Gary, we have another caller here, and that caller is Anna. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say before you go to the next, before you get to Anna, I just want to say one of the other issues, and I can't remember the figure, but the number of chaplains in the armed service, and they provide counseling to members of other faiths as well as their own. The number of chaplains is abysmally small. The per capita rate, I forget how many chaplains to how many soldiers there are. In fact, I'll look that up before we reconvene at 5 o'clock New York time. But it's very, very low.
Indeed it is. I think we mentioned that on one of the shows a while back, but I can't remember the figure right now. Gary, our next caller is Anna from Florida. Anna, welcome to Paltalk Unplugged with Gary Baumgarten.
So much, Boaz, and thank you, Gary. I think it's really important that we're bringing up this topic of conversation, not only when it comes to the mental health of our veterans and also the sustenance of their families, but also when it comes to veteran homelessness. 1 in 4 homeless people are veterans. This is something that has to be addressed. And I have to agree with your previous caller that not enough is being done, not only by their families, because we never know, maybe some of these people do not have that support base, but also by their communities. And with Gary bringing up the abysmal number of chaplains, I'm hoping that perhaps by the end of his show at 5 o'clock, that there will be some sort of feasible solution that perhaps right here on Paltalk that we could come up with, because looking at what's going on with Walter Reed, looking at the fact that so many veterans are being misdiagnosed who have PTSD simply because they can't afford to pay out the benefits, I think that at this point, even if they cut taxes, that even if the national debt was to go up, it's time that we start supporting and investing in our veterans and worry about the cost later. Thanks.
What a wonderful idea for the people on Paltalk to get together and try to help resolve this situation rather than just talk about it, Anna. I'm so glad you made that suggestion, and I hope you come back at 5 o'clock New York time to reiterate that. And, I was absolutely remiss for not mentioning the fact that, yes, 1 in 4 of the homeless people here in the United States are veterans. And, again, when people march off to war all spick and polish and in their wonderful uniforms with the flags waving and the balloons released. We recognize that and we honor them. Then when they come back and they're lying on the streets of Manhattan, we tend to step over them, pretend that they don't exist. We don't even stop to think that a goodly number of them are veterans of our war.
Indeed, Gary, and I've always said that there is no justified reason whatsoever for a veteran to be homeless after serving his country. It is a shame, an absolute shame. Gary, let's go to our next caller. Our next caller is Russ. That's Scott, actually. Scott from Canada. Scott, welcome to Paltalk Unplugged with Gary Baumgarten.
Well, I do agree that one of the solutions to overcoming this problem is things like this show right here. We have to get to a point where we can destigmatize post-traumatic stress disorder. People see it as, come on, why don't you just wake up and go out there and do it? But people who are returning, they have symptoms of depression. And people who are depressed, they turn to substance abuse to solve their problems, and they're not actually proactive. They're not going out and looking for help in general. Depressed people don't do that in general. They're depressed. Post-traumatic stress disorder makes you feel helpless. So here we have these depressed, helpless people returning, and we have the general population going, these guys just don't want to go out and do any work. And they become homeless, and because they're helpless. So we need to work on destigmatizing it and, having the general public realize that these are real issues that they're dealing with, and it's just not a whim that they decided they don't want to go to work that day. That would be my opinion.
Well, Scott, that's an excellent point, and it's so easy to look at somebody who's curled up on a heating grate on a sidewalk here in Manhattan, maybe not too far from where I am standing at Times Square in front of the Armed Forces recruiting station, and say, hey, you bum, why don't you just get a job? Not stopping to think that what was the last job that he had? That job was going out and putting his life on the line for this country.
Exactly, Gary. Gary, we're just about at time, so I guess you'll probably want to sum it up.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for joining us here for our first Paltalk Unplugged live today from Times Square. We're going to do this once a week at 3 o'clock New York time every Thursday. That's the plan, to discuss the issues of the day, to give you an opportunity to actually interact with people out here on the street, and them an opportunity to interact with you on Paltalk. And we're going to hopefully bring you, we are going to bring you additional programming similar to this as time goes on, so stay tuned. I'll be back at 5 o'clock New York time for the next edition of News Talk Online on Paltalk.com, where we will continue right here in Paltalk Studio A this discussion. Until then, peace out.
All right, Gary, thank you very much. Folks, we'll continue this discussion at 5 p.m. New York time on News Talk Online with Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans Association's Tom Tarantino, who himself was divorced right after serving a tour of duty in Iraq, right here in Paltalk Studio A at 5 p.m. New York time. Thank you all for being with us, and we'll be seeing you a little later. Peace out.